You are gonna die!
Meet John Zandig. Zandig is the founder and formerly the owner of Combat Zone Wrestling, or CZW for short. If you've been on the internet long enough, you might recognize him as the voice behind the famous JEEZUS line in the opening of every Botchamania on YouTube. Zandig, throughout his 15 years as a full-time wrestler, became one of the most influential people of the independent scene and a big reason for why deathmatch wrestling achieved such heights in terms of notoriety and controversy through the creation of CZW and the matches that took place within the promotion that people still talk about to this very day. And that is what we will be discussing in today's video. If you do enjoy this video and you want to see more videos in regards to the random stuff that comes to my brain in regards to pro wrestling, be sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And with that being said, let's get right into it. Zandig began training for pro wrestling in 1994 under Larry Sharp, who trained wrestlers such as The Big Show, Bam Bam Bigelow, Chris Candido, Raven, Sheamus, and the list keeps going. Zandig's first documented match was in 1996 for the National Wrestling Alliance, or NWA for short, where he wrestled under the ring name The Icon. This is where he would wrestle until about 1999 when CZW was created. CZW initially was created to be exclusively a training school for Zandig to hone his craft and to teach others what he was taught, but later evolved into a wrestling promotion. While the idea of his school expanded into something more, CZW still acted as a training facility for many young wrestlers and still acts as a training facility to this very day. Some wrestlers trained by Zandig include Lobo, Justice Payne, and Nick Gage, who would go on to arguably be one of the most notorious pro wrestlers alive today. From a performance perspective, CZW would become one of the most diverse wrestling promotions in the US in terms of styles clashing, shout out AJ Styles. On any given CZW show, you could find a combination of all styles, including technical, brawling, high-flying, tag team, and the company's most notable and most popular genre, deathmatch wrestling. CZW had perhaps the most violent brand of pro wrestling throughout all of North America throughout the mid-2010s, with a stacked roster for that genre with names such as Nick Gage, the Messiah, formerly of XPW, got his finger cut off, yada yada yada, Wife Beater, yes, that was his name, Nate Hatred, Spider Nate Webb, Zandig himself, and my personal favorite, Sick Nick Mondo. Like how I said earlier, you could see any form of wrestling on any given CZW show, and you were guaranteed to see some of the nastiest shit you've ever seen on any show. Even more so if you went out of your way to watch any of CZW's marquee shows such as Tournament of Death and Cage of Death. Tournament of Death is exactly how it sounds. It's a tournament filled with almost any imaginable hardcore match type you could think of for each round, but amplify that by fucking 20. Listen to some of these match types. Barbed wire, canvas, and light tubes deathmatch. Barbed wire, boards, and panes of glass corners deathmatch. 2 out of 3 light tube log cabins, which you would have to put your opponent through one of these twice to win the match, and that's only 3 of the match types used in this event over time. Zandig participated in a good amount of these matches, but perhaps the most well-known and talked about match he had was at Tournament of Death 2 with Sick Nick Mondo, where Zandig would deliver his finishing move, known as the Mother Effin' Bomb, off of the roof of a building through tables and light tubes in what would forever be known as one of the most insane spots in the history of professional wrestling. As you can see, Zandig kind of overshot this spot, which did not help at all when you take into consideration that the tables were not out nearly enough to secure a safe-ish landing. So Zandig was able to cushion himself for the most part, whereas Mondo took the brunt of that spot and basically landed flat on the floor. It's insane to me how Mondo didn't die or suffer long-term damage from that spot. He was even able to finish the match and win that tournament, which after he would retire from wrestling officially. It wasn't solely because of this spot, but I'm sure it really solidified his case. Zandig also created Cage of Death, a War Games inspired match, but with a lot more insanity, but instead of 2 rings, it used 1 in most instances. The closest comparison I can give to that in the US would be when TNA used to do those lethal lockdown matches, but even then, it blew that, War Games, which includes WCW, MLW, and WWE's versions of it, and AEW's Blood and Guts event out of the water in terms of violence. My personal recommendation, if you do want to check one of these out, would be Cage of Death 5. A low-key, no, not like low-key, rule for wrestling is that if you want to show wrestling to a non-watcher, it shouldn't be a deathmatch or any insane hardcore shit, but I truly believe that this might be the exception, and it remains to this day as one of my absolute favorite deathmatches. I might even make a little video of it breaking it down at some point, but let me know if you would even want to see something like that in the comments below. But of course, nothing can last forever, and Zandig, after owning CZW for 10 years, decided to sell the company in 2009 to wrestler DJ Hyde, who still runs the company to this very day. The reasoning for selling the company, according to Zandig, was that he was too injured and tired to continue the day-to-day operations of running CZW, as well as running into many financial troubles along the way. On a much smaller scale, it kind of reminds me about how everything went down with FMW back in the day, where owner and founder Atsushi Onita brought the company to insane heights, coming from essentially nothing, which was crazy for a company who was on a much smaller scale compared to a company like New Japan or All Japan back in the day. Onita would retire and sell FMW to someone within the company, but in this case, it would be FMW's ring announcer, Soichi Arai. The difference between the two situations is that FMW ran by Arai helped bring the company to its lowest points financially and creatively, and I'm not going to get into the grim details of the aftermath of FMW, but I will say that the original company is not in operation today. As for CZW, they are still running shows, and it is said by many that the creative and storylines behind these shows are much stronger under DJ Hyde compared to when Zandig was running it. The company doesn't run as many death matches as the old CZW, which sucks for the consumer, but when you take the wrestler's safety into account, it's definitely for the best. The roster isn't the tight-knit group it once was, and it's just a company for indie wrestlers to get booked on, but a lot of the names that you see on national TV right now would have probably had a much harder time getting noticed or getting that exposure if it wasn't for the work with CZW throughout the 2010s. Names like MJF, Joe Gacy, The Rascals, Rich Swann, and that's just to name a few. They still run Zandig's Tournament of Death annually, but they haven't run Cage of Death since 2019 due to the pandemic, and presumably not finding a venue that would house such an event since. As for Zandig, he still pops up every now and then around the deathmatch scene for some appearances, but for the most part, he just chills at home in Jersey from what I understand. He helped establish Tournament of Survival for GCW back in 2016, which is pretty much the exact same thing as Tournament of Death but under a different banner, and had another insane spot similar to the Nick Mondo one, but this time it was with Joey Janela. He's made some appearances since 2010 with CZW as well, with his last documented match for them taking place on January 14th, 2012, losing to the man he sold the company to, DJ Hyde. When I think of John Zandig, I think of an insane motherfucker who was willing to do whatever it took to get his company over and make his three letters mean more than any other independent company on the planet. Many people viewed CZW as a spiritual successor to ECW, despite it being created before ECW went out of business. But even then, it made ECW look like 1994 WWF comparatively with how nuts these fucking guys were, man. Even with Zandig being gone as the owner for as long as he has and CZW not having as many death matches as they once did, people still associate deathmatch wrestling, or ultraviolence as Zandig would call it, with CZW, and likely will for many years to come, even with GCW passing them throughout the 2010s in popularity. People criticize Zandig's wrestling abilities above all, but he will always be one of the most believable promos in the history of the sport, in my opinion. In an industry where believability is dead and everyone knows every nook and cranny about how pro wrestling works behind the scenes, Zandig would cut a promo and make you believe every word he was saying, probably because he believed it to an extent. In the infamous promo that I showed a bit of at the beginning of this video, he flat out said he was going to murder other wrestlers, and he said it with such conviction that even though you knew that he wasn't actually going to kill these guys, it got you in that zone and in that mind frame that he was dead serious, even if it was for a split second.
Oh my! Oh! Yo, you're gonna die! You are gonna die! I guarantee it! I am gonna kill you!
But yeah, that was John Zandig and the most ultra-violent man on the face of the earth. What did you think? Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you thought of this video as I look for all feedback, positive or negative. If you did enjoy it, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future videos. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out.